Hi guys, we're back with chapter 4. Oops. Bound for Oregon. Here we go. Never had I seen so many wagons and tents, or the smoke of so many campfires. From my favorite perch up on the spring seat of our wagon, they stretched out as far as I could see, and more families were arriving in Independence every day. Father said, they would ever find. I wondered how they would ever find an unoccupied spot to make camp. Father had to make arrangements for us to travel in a large train of 100 wagons. In just 3 or 4 days, we would be starting out. The men had met to choose a captain and other officers, and had written out rules to make the journey together easier. In the meantime, everyone was busy replenishing food supplies in the bustling shops of Independence, trading for the strongest oxen and mules, making last minute repairs on wagons, giving the wheels a final greasing so they would roll along smoothly. My land, said Mother, shaking her head at all the noise. This surely is a lively place. I had to agree. Many families were traveling in large groups, with 3 or 4 wagons and drivers hired on to herd their cattle. All day long, hammers banged and saws buzzed, dogs barked and cattle bawled. Children were everywhere, racing around campfires, jumping over wagon tongues, tripping over tent pegs. Some of the men were rough-looking and quarrelsome, and Mother warned us to stay away from them. Every day there were dog fights and sometimes fist fights. It was so different from our peaceful evenings with just our family around the campfire. But I liked the excitement. Next to our wagon was a family named Grant, who had a son, David, about John's age. Within hours, we had all become fast friends. John and David rode off together to drive the cattle to pasture. Mother and Mrs. Grant were comparing pie recipes, while Father and Mr. Grant worked to repair a broken wheel of the Grant's wagon. I had a way of sometimes of thinking of people as animals, and Mr. Grant put me in the mind of a strutting red rooster in a barnyard. He was a little man who walked like a big man, chest puffed out, full of smiles and talk and elaborate plans. His wife, thin and nervous as a bedraggled hen, looked as if she was worn out trying to keep up with him. Where are you from? Mother asked her that first day. Most recently from Illinois, Mrs. Grant answered, but I was born in Massachusetts. It turned out that they had lived in 5 states, but never long in any one, as Mr. Grant was too restless to stay put. Each move had brought them farther west, but this one, Mrs. Grant claimed, was going to be their last. You can't go farther than west than the Pacific, she said, with a smile that seemed a little sad to me. I think she's getting tired of moving. Nearby was another family with 2 children, just the same ages as Lavina and me. I played games of Annie Over with red-headed laughing Charlie and a bunch of other boys, one team on either side of the wagon. We tossed a ball over, and whoever caught it would run around the wagon and try to tag one of the other team. If you were tagged, you had to join that team. The game went on, full of running and shouting, laughing and arguing, until everyone was on the same side, and Lavina had Charlie's little sister Matilda to play dolls and other quiet games. When Mother called us, Lavina would return to the wagon as neat and tidy as when she had left. Well, I came back all rumpled and dirty, my dress covered with dark grass stains. It seemed as if Mother was constantly frowning at me. My real mother wouldn't care about a few grass stains, I thought, scowling. Inside my head, I could see her again, little and lively and smiling, sunlight glitting on her bright copper hair. Remember that fantasy mom she has? In another camp was old grandmother, not like grandma at all, but wrinkled and shriveled looking, who always had a pipe in her mouth. I had to pass her wagon every time I went to fetch water for Mother. Howdy, sis, she would say to me in a cracked, high voice. What be your name? Mary Ellen Todd, I would answer. She would stare at me, her pipe bobbing slowly up and down. You do be a fine little gal, she told me. And the next time I passed by on my way to fetch water, she would say exactly the same thing. Also in a wagon near us was a girl named Lucinda, who had been very sick for a long time. I had never seen her because she could not come outside except in the warmest days. But her mother told Mother that the family was making the journey west in hopes of curing her. One morning, Mother used the last of her eggs to make a boiled custard. Perhaps Lucinda would like some, she said to me. Would you take a cup over? Hesitantly, I approached their family's wagon. I did not know what a very sick girl would look like. Lucinda, I called softly. A hand reached out and pulled aside the wagon flap, and I could see inside. Sitting on a mattress, a gray wool shawl draped around her shoulders, was a dark-haired girl with thin, delicate face. Her mother sat next to her, combing out her long hair. My mother thought you might like some custard, I said, holding up the cup. Slowly the girl turned her head, looking at me with large brown eyes. Her face was as white as a wagon cover, the skin covering it nearly transparent, as if you might see inside to blood and bone. She reminded me of something, but I couldn't quite remember what. Thank you very much, she said in a light musical voice. A butterfly, I thought. And as I hurried away, that's what she reminded me of, a frail, fluttering white butterfly. I went to look for Charlie. Suddenly I felt the urge to run and jump and play and loud shouting games. The best times in camp were the evenings. Campfires burned cheerily in the darkness, and everyone would gather around them. The men told stories, long and rambling and punctuated with deep bursts of laughter, while the women knitted or sewed in the half light. Some of the camp's old had fiddlers or flutes or banjos. Music seemed always in the air. Vivian and I played games of hide and seek with Charlie and Matilda and the other children until Mother found us and sent us to bed. Afterward, I lay listening to the sound of the nearby fiddle. Happy, rollicking melodies that could change unexpectedly to a slow, sorrowful tune that brought tears to my eyes until finally I slept. The day before we were to start out, I was helping Father grease and tar the wagon wheels. He had removed one wheel to work on it. Mother was baking biscuits on the Dutch oven over by the fire, while Lavina and Cynthia played quietly inside the tent. Suddenly, behind me, I heard a low, rumbling. Oh. I turned around to see a big red hound dog about to jump on Rover. Rover growled back. Oh. No, Rover! I tried to warn him. The red dog was twice his size, his legs and powerful neck scarred from fighting, but Rover paid no attention. In a moment, the two dogs were rolling around in the dirt, fiercely snapping and snarling. First one was on top and then the other, in a tangle of red and white fur. Poor Rover was bound to get the worst of it. How could I save him, I wondered? I could not even get near him. Now the tumbling dogs bumped against the side of the tent, knocked over the bucket of water. It spilled on Cynthia, and she began to wail. There, Cynthia, soothed Mother. It's all right. Jumping up to go to her, she dropped the lid of the Dutch oven, spilling coals all over our biscuits. In his hurry to help, Father stumbled over the wagon wheel and fell almost on top of the snarling dogs. I jumped up on the brake block to get out of the way. Cynthia and Lavina were both sobbing with fright now as the dogs rolled toward the fire. Just then a long, stringy-looking man in homespun breeches and a limp brown hat came hurrying toward us. He had a straggly beard and squinting eyes, and his mouth was sunken in, as if he had lost all his teeth. Towser! He cried, aiming a hard kick at the dog's ribs. Begone with you, scamp! The big red dog slunk quickly away, and Rover crept under the wagon to lick his wounds. The man peered at him, then at Father, hands on hips, chewing on a huge wad of tobacco. He ambled toward the fire. That Towser's a mighty fine dog, he drawled. A sly grin played around the corners of his mouth. I knew what that grin meant. He was daring Father to contradict him. Father was a peaceable man who never looked for an argument. Still, this was how many of the fistfights in camp got started. I watched Father's face, waiting for him to reply. He was frowning at the ground, his jaw tightly clenched. I reckon, he said quietly. The man swaggered up close to the fire, spit out a stream of tobacco juice right next to Mother's biscuits. I heard her gasp. Mother never let anyone, even the children, near her cooking fires. All at once I noticed a circle of faces just beyond the campfire. A crowd of men and boys was gathering. As if sensing a fight about to start, I held my breath, waiting to see what would happen. There was a long moment of silence. Very slowly, Father bent down, brushed the ashes from the biscuits with his fingers, and covered them with the lid of the Dutch oven. Then, getting to his feet, he looked at the man steadily in the eye. Looks like it might be going to rain again, he observed, as calmly as if he were talking to the family at dinner. The man took a step back and looked up at the sky. I wouldn't wonder, he agreed gruffly. Reaching into his pocket, he took out a plug of tobacco and a knife. Slowly and deliberately, he cut off a large corner and stuffed it into his cheek. Well, he mumbled, I guess I might as well be going. Good day to you, said Father, still staring at him. You do, sir, the man replied, and he ambled away, still chewing for all he was worth. I let out a long breath of relief. Like fog, the crowd quickly melted away. As soon as everyone was gone, Rover came limping out from under the wagon. His long white fur was matted, and blood ran from the cuts on his foot and one black ear. Lavinia and I threw our arms around him, and he licked our faces as if to say he was sorry. Father lifted Cynthia, still wet and scared, into his arms. Don't yike, big doggies, she kept whimpering over and over. You girls were all very brave, Mother told us, kneeling down to tend to her biscuits. Although she did not often show us affection, I had to admit that when we did something right, she always said so. She looked up at Father. Well, she said, puffing out her cheeks, imitating Towser's master's voice, I guess I might as well be going. And they both smiled. Father had been the brave one, I thought, as I went to refill the water bucket. Yet it was puzzling. Nothing had really happened, just a few words around a campfire. It was not so much what Father had done, but what he hadn't done. Been drawn into a fight that seemed brave to me. Later, as we ate our evening meal of biscuits, fried bacon, potatoes, and apple dumplings around our grub box table, we told John the story of the dogfight. What? He stammered in surprise. Rover was attacked by Towser? Why, I'd have thought that big old pothound would chaw him up just like his master chaws his tobacco. Rover, hearing his name, wagged his tail happily, and we all had a good laugh. What I find interesting is Father did not have a fight with this guy. This guy was antagonizing him, but yet he wouldn't be drawn in. What kinds of things does that tell you about Father? Be sure you can answer that question because it'll probably pop up again. Okay, see you guys soon.